She was enjoying one of those rare Malibu mornings that feel like borrowed time. The Pacific flat as glass, the hummingbirds strafing the bougainvillea, her teacup still fogging the rim when the courier rang the bell, a padded envelope, a perfunctory scribble on the scanner, the muted crackle of packing tape. She hadn't ordered anything, but curiosity is a muscle. She flexed it, slit the seal, and slid out an advance galley fragrant with fresh ink. The dedication page was harmless. The table of contents felt like old news. Then, on page 147, a single paragraph lunged from the type. "We finally slept together." She wasn't great, to be honest. The words detonated. 20 years of carefully tended privacy, atomized into gossip fodder, sacrificed for the price of a hardback and a bump in a memoir's first week sales. Somewhere in New York, marketing executives were drafting press releases and stocking morning show greenrooms. In Susan Dey's kitchen, a bond forged under klieg lights and teenage hysteria was shriveling to ash before the kettle even finished steaming. That instantaneous betrayal would become the tectonic fault running beneath every choice she made thereafter. The interviews she refused, the reunion paychecks she left on the table, the vow of public silence she hardened into steel. But that incendiary anecdote, however sensational, is only a footnote in the sprawling mosaic of Susan Dey. Say her name beneath the mirrored disco balls of a 1970s nostalgia cruise, and the crowd will erupt with tambourine nostalgia. Lori Partridge, the serene older sister whose harmonies floated above polyester bell-bottoms and bubblegum choruses, still syndicated across retro cable blocks. Whisper it in a first-year tort seminar, and rising attorneys will straighten their blazers. Grace Van Owen, the fictional prosecutor whose surgical cross-examinations and simmering integrity on LA law inspired a generation of women to sit for the LSAT. Yet those fluorescent identities obscured the subtler, starker realities of the flesh and blood woman who carried them. Behind Lori's shy smile stood a child who learned the anatomy of grief at 8, when pneumonia took her mother before she could master a two-wheeler. Behind Grace's ice-sharp intellect lived a teenager who rode the Harlem line into Manhattan clutching a $10 modeling stipend and the unspoken fear that one misstep could send her back to suburban anonymity. She endured casting calls where producers weighed her with their eyes, studio fittings that whispered she was still a smidge too big, and tabloid pages counting calories she hadn't eaten, while teenage America pinned posters of David Cassidy above their waterbeds. Susan watched her own cheekbones jut sharper each month, the private price of chasing an industry's mercurial affection. In adulthood, the roles multiplied. There was Susan, the clandestine academic, absorbing psychology textbooks between takes to decode the fame machine swallowing her peers whole. Susan, the fierce young mother, taping handwritten lunch notes to her daughter, Sarah's thermos, before racing to a pre-dawn call time. Susan, the relentless advocate, who would one day stride through fluorescent hospital corridors at UCLA's Rape Treatment Center, offering survivors a calm that courtroom dramas rarely capture. And later, Susan, the intentional phantom, perfecting the art of disappearing from paparazzi lenses with the same technical precision she once used to find her light on a sitcom soundstage. Threading through each manifestation wins the fault line of commodified intimacy. Hollywood traffics in manufactured closeness. In that world, trust is currency. When Cassidy's paperback confessional cashed in on a private memory, quantifying her in a single cruel sentence, Susan answered not with dueling publicists or televised catharsis, but with the louder thunder of refusal. No comment, no cameo, no nostalgia tour. The absence itself became her declaration, an invisible copyright stamped over her own narrative. So the road we trace tonight is neither simple nor straight. It begins in a Peoria hospital corridor, scented with disinfectant, and ends on a secluded stretch of Pacific sand, where Susan writes her true autobiography in saltwater footprints no paparazzo can reprint. In between lie Manhattan casting cattle calls, sound stages sticky with spilled fresca, courtroom sets buzzing with Emmy gossip, therapy offices where mirrors were covered with sheets, and advocacy boardrooms where trauma statistics were recited like emergency codes. We will meet the grief-struck 8-year-old, the rail-thin teen idol, the Golden Globe winner, the UCLA board member, the betrayed friend, and the woman who finally learned that the surest rescue often arrives in the form of her own steadfast silence. Buckle in. The distance from Laurie's tambourine to Grace's gavel is longer, darker, and far more instructive than any sitcom laugh track ever allowed us to hear, and the echo of that single paragraph, page 147, line 3, still vibrates beneath every step of the journey. Peoria, Illinois, December 10th, 1952. Ruth Pyle. Day cradled her newborn, unaware pneumonia would steal her life. 8 years later, little Susan learned loss before multiplication tables. When classmates recited state capitals, she memorized nursing home visitor hours, determined never to miss a Saturday with her ailing grandfather. The move to Mount Kisco, New York, introduced commuter rails and Manhattan's intoxicating skyline. At 14, she balanced geometry homework with castings at Ford models. Rejection letters arrived often, acceptance letters rarely. Yet each no became a drill that hardened her resolve. By 16, she was posing for 17 spreads and educational pamphlets on puberty, lending wholesome credibility to taboo conversations. Spring 1970. ABC's talent office shuffled endless headshots seeking a big sister for its new sitcom. Someone flipped over a Polaroid of a lanky hazel-eyed teen with 0 credits and wrote natural. Within weeks, Susan Dey reported to Stage 32 at Burbank Studios, where plywood hallways smelled of Fresca and fresh paint. She adapted at warp speed, memorizing pages between algebra problems, learning to strum a Fender Mustang convincingly enough to satisfy roving set photographers. Fans mailed letters by the truckload. Studio execs hired a full-time handler to sift the marriage proposals. Beneath the satin costumes and fake family sing-alongs, Susan and 20-year-old heartthrob David Cassidy formed a gentle alliance. 2 kids steering a ratings juggernaut neither controlled. Tour life exposed the first fissures. Cassidy's hotel suites turned into impromptu after-parties. Susan preferred herbal tea and paperback novels. He joked about her grandma bedtime. She rolled her eyes at his endless entourage. Still, affection lingered, secret smiles during sound checks, whispered encouragement before live tapings. But fame amplifies everything. Cassidy's every flirtation filled gossip columns, while Susan's shy reserve was recast as aloofness. On press junkets, she fielded questions about wedding bells she had never rung, each headline equating her identity with his chipped away at autonomy she was desperate to protect. When the Partridge Family wrapped in 1974, many expected Susan to vanish into teen idol trivia nights. Instead, she booked a seat on Barnaby Jones and dove into the TV movie apocalypse drama Mary Jane Harper Cried Last Night. In one harrowing scene, her character, a mother teetering on psychosis, cradled a doll she believed was her real child. Studio staff reported she stayed in character between takes, pacing the corridor, whispering lullabies to porcelain. The gamble paid dividends. Critics who once dismissed her as bubblegum decor praised her raw vulnerability. She wrote in her journal, "If I can make them forget Laurie Partridge for even 10 minutes, I've succeeded." Success could not silence an internal tyrant. On Partridge, she had survived on cottage cheese, grapefruit, and adrenaline. The habit metastasized into full-blown anorexia. One afternoon on Looker, 1981, a costumer slipped a larger-sized dress onto her rack, just in case. Susan burst into tears in the wardrobe trailer, convinced her career teetered on the scale. Recovery began only when a trusted physician confronted her. "Your bones are asking for mercy." Years later, she addressed a therapy group of teenage actors. "Perfection is a mirage the industry photoshops onto your brain." The room fell silent, then erupted in applause that sounded to Susan like freedom. By 1985, NBC sought to reinvent the legal drama. Writer Stephen Bochco and Terry Louise Fisher needed a female lead who could exude warmth while dissecting a witness with surgical precision. Susan's audition was a revelation. She delivered her monologue, then calmly asked to redo it, faster with fewer blinks. Grace wouldn't blink. Producers realized they had found their North Star. Over 6 seasons, Grace Van Owen evolved from crusading deputy DA to judge, love interest, and moral compass. They earned a Golden Globe and 3 consecutive Emmy nominations. But more importantly, the part cemented her reputation as a substantive, dramatic force. Young women mailed letters declaring she'd inspired their law school dreams. Susan saved everyone. Amid late-night rewrites, she married powerhouse agent Leonard Hershin, Clint Eastwood's rep. Their daughter Sarah arrived in 1978. Susan's trailer door now bore a homemade sign, "Napping baby, knock softly." Yet the union fractured under dueling schedules and paparazzi flashbulbs. Their 1981 divorce was finalized in a hushed Pasadena courtroom. In 1988, she wed producer Bernard Safransky, a man comfortable off-screen. Even friends described their home as a fortress of normal. Dinner at 7, slippers by the door, Hollywood chatter kept to a minimum. The press quickly lost interest. That was the point. Survivors of sexual assault often recall Susan's first words at UCLA's Rape Treatment Center. "Your voice matters." She didn't just lend her name. She attended policy briefings, learned legislative jargon, and lobbied in Sacramento for expanded victim services. When asked why she chose this cause, Susan referenced her own experiences orbiting men wielding disproportionate power. Silence favors predators. Storytelling arms survivors. In 1994, she co-narrated a documentary on campus rape, refusing payment and requesting funds be redirected toward housing for students awaiting trial testimony. In Partridge years, Cassidy's swagger sparkled, but behind closed doors, his behavior often mirrored the excess of rock legends twice his age. Groupies queued outside hotel stairwells. Tour managers negotiated with security as if coordinating border crossings. Susan initially rationalized the chaos. "He's carrying the weight of 1,000,000 fan screams." Yet fatigue bred disappointment. One night in Cleveland, she watched him kiss a stranger backstage, minutes after consoling a 12-year-old sobbing fan. Something froze inside her. Still, their bond limped on until Cassidy's memoir obliterated the truce. He didn't merely reveal intimacy, he graded it. The objectification she'd fought her entire career was now hardcover canon. Susan's phone rang for quotes. She declined every request. When Entertainment Tonight camped outside her driveway, Bernard built a taller gate. Cassidy embarked on a press tour, half apology in tow. "I was young. I exaggerated. I'm sorry if Susan felt hurt." The conditional verb if sliced deep. She recognized PR triage. Invites for Partridge anniversary specials multiplied, some offering six-figure appearance fees. She turned down every one, telling her agent, "My silence is not for sale." Studio execs alternated between admiration and exasperation. In private, she processed the betrayal through ink and solitude. Daily ocean walks, lengthy journal entries, therapy sessions where she practiced reauthoring her own narrative. One therapist urged a confrontation. Susan shook her head. "My absence is confrontation enough." By the early 2000s, reruns of The Partridge Family introduced a new generation to Laurie's melodic grin, unaware the actress behind it was volunteering in hospital corridors miles away. Law students quote Grace Van Owen in moot court competitions, blissfully ignorant of the battles Susan fought with a bathroom scale. Screenwriters now cite her as proof that a teen star can navigate Hollywood without combusting. Advocacy groups honor her annually for sustained, hands-on commitment. Yet she measures success differently. The day a survivor whispers thank you. The letter from a first-year attorney who chose prosecution because Grace wouldn't blink. The daughter who grew up shielded from flashbulbs. Television history loves easy labels. The wholesome teen idol, the icy prosecutor, the celebrity recluse. But easy labels dissolve under scrutiny, and Susan Dey's life is proof that the real narrative often hides between commercial breaks. Grief at 8 forged her armor. A cutthroat modeling circuit sharpened her discipline. Network stardom dangled both worship and scrutiny in equal measure. Then came the private war with anorexia, fought quietly behind dressing room mirrors while the studio audience laughed on cue. Her evolution from Laurie in bell-bottoms to Grace in gabardine wasn't a career pivot. It was a reclamation project. Every dramatic role, every advocacy speech, every declined reunion invite stitched a new panel onto a patchwork banner that read, "I decide the story now." When David Cassidy's memoir tried to rip that banner, she did not counterpunch on talk shows or sue for defamation. She wielded the far heavier weapon of silence, letting absence hammer the point home louder than headlines ever could. Yet her quiet does not equal retreat. It echoes daily in UCLA hospital wings, where survivors speak her name with gratitude, in the courtroom arguments of young attorneys who tell interviewers that Grace Van Owen lit their path, and in the hush of Malibu dawns, where a woman once blindsided by betrayal now sips tea unbothered, her boundaries intact. Fame promised applause, life delivered dissonance. Susan Dey's triumph lies in mastering both tempos until the noise resolved into a rhythm she could dance to on her own terms. So when a Partridge Family rerun flickers across your screen, listen beyond the bubblegum chorus. Under the tambourine jangle, you'll hear the deeper cadence of resilience, a measured beat that insists dignity can survive betrayal, purpose can outshine scandal, and a single steadfast silence can thunder louder and longer than any tell-all ever printed.